Amazing creativity. It's the perfect title that summons a madman's quest to reinvent and create something for the client that leaves the consumer spellbound. And the already Herculean task gets even more challenging when you've spent around 3 decades in the industry. After all, trends, technology, and expectations all keep changing. So I caught up with the global partner of Wieden+Kennedy, Tony Davidson, who stepped into advertising 3 decades ago and has managed to leave quite an illustrious footprint by bagging multiple creative awards for his work on Volkswagen, Levi's, Nike, Honda, and many more. But the question is, has the industry evolved even with the advent of tech? The industry's short-term goals seem to be bagging awards, but is that truly enough? Here's Tony Davidson's unabashedly candid view on it all. Thank you so much for joining us. Truly a pleasure having you on Brand X today.
Thank you for having me.
Tony, first question being, you've made this comment quite often, so I think we're going to delve into it to figure out why you make that comment. You've said interesting people don't join advertising anymore. Do you think that statement still holds good today?
The new generation don't look at advertising in the same way as maybe the kids of the 60s looked at it, which was like, wow, advertising, this new thing. Television commercials, what you can write things and somebody pays you to, and they go on television and people watch them. And you had the Sarches, you had Hegarty, you had, Salman Rushdie was a writer in the back in the day, Lord Putnam, Alan Parker. I mean, this is a pretty eclectic group of people who fell into that business. And I think it was a really exciting time because I think there was a balance that they were incredibly creative. The clients knew they needed this thing but didn't quite know how it worked. And so there was this kind of togetherness, whereas I think in recent years, like, more research, data analytics has come in, and like everybody, I also think clients used to stay with their brands a bit longer. Sure. And now they move and flip and move around, and everything's a lot more quick, promiscuous. Most communications are very one-dimensional, I find, and very short. Let's have a little burst and then do another one. There's no sort of long-term thinking. Right. Advertising per se is still sort of going along, doing the same things, trying to interrupt people when they don't want to be interrupted. I think it's sort of trying to find itself again and go, well, how should a brand exist or live? Sure. And I think the smart brands have done it in smart ways. There's a lot of old brands that are still going along trying to go, oh, well, we need to change, so let's go to a more creative agency rather than going, no, we need to change full scale. We need to. It's very hard when you've got a set platform, you make this product, you make it in this way. Actually, it's full of crap, and I'm still going to try and advertise. There's fundamental things going on. So I'm just a little bit disappointing. There doesn't seem to be as much maverickness or gut feel within advertising, or strong points of views. I mean, most of the good work I've done is when the brand has a strong point of view, and that's not necessarily to do with the actual ins and outs of how the product's made. The other thing is, a lot of brands are adapting to the many different social streams and trying to, if I hear another brand go, I'm trying to get in with millennials, and millennials are like this. I'm going, millennials are, they're like humans, and humans like things that disrupt sometimes. Sure. Humans like things that make them feel something, and it's kind of, just so much jargon and sort of, I don't know, like research and data. I think technology has freed the whole world up to be more creative. But ironically, I think the advertising industry in some ways has become less creative. So
would you say with the advent of technology, you've seen the advertising industry as a whole actually degenerate instead of actually upping their game?
Well, I think a lot of advertising's always borrowed from arts and culture. From life. And art in the same way has borrowed back from advertising, Andy Warhol. But I think, now I see so much stuff that I see something on the internet that's been created by somebody else who's just out there making and creating stuff, and advertising sort of grabs hold of it and sticks a logo on the back of it and thinks that's really being true to that brand rather than really sort of getting hold of that brand. Before, you could hide behind advertising. You could go, hey, I'm this brand, believe it or not, I'm this brand, smoking. Actually, no, subtext, you're killing people, and this is the only place that they get to find out about that. Well, now they can find out about everything anywhere. They can find out where your product comes from. They'll outfound, you know. So it's kind of like actually advertising becomes less important for me in some ways than actually what's your purpose as a brand.
So you know, you've been around for about 3 decades. Give me a sense about client behavior and really client psychology. How was it, let's say, in the last decade versus now, or let's say even 5 years ago, given that so much has changed and the pressures are so much more? Chief marketing officers have an average lifespan of 2 years, and everyone has their own agenda. So how has that really impacted their psyche and hence the output of advertising?
I think originally when I got into the business, there was far less marketing savvy people in those positions, and because of that, the work was better. And that sounds quite ironic, but I think they trusted more or relied more on a relationship that was of equal, your knowledge is this, mine's this around that, can we get together to do that? Whereas recently, you know, a lot of people from marketing have gone over client side, and you would think that that would be a good thing, but I think it's a bad thing because it seems to be far more like, there seems to be less of an even keel in the relationship.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Also, they're not there for that long. They're thinking about their next job, so they're not actually completely ingrained in that brand and loyal to that brand and thinking this is a job for life.
Long-term goals, according to some professionals, are passé because technology is changing so fast, media is changing even faster, and you know, an average life of a CMO is 2.5 years maximum. So what is wrong with chasing short-term goals?
Let's be honest about it. I think a lot of you go to Cannes, these advertising festivals or something, and you see the work that's winning, and it's kind of like agencies getting little charities or little things to do something good that wins them awards. And it's bollocks. It's not part of culture. It's not real, you know. The Ice Bucket Challenges, that got into culture. That's culture. Lots of people were doing it. Everybody was talking about, you know. But like, it's so sad. And every year I go back, it's these little explosions rather than, wow, you know, what Dan Wieden did with Nike, what John Hegarty did with Levi's back in the day. You know, they were fundamentally making incremental business growth happen along with their client, but they were also building this sort of, you know, this brand, this ethos. And I just don't see a lot of that going on with brands any longer.
How has Wieden really changed its culture, and how has it reinvented the way it works, you know, just to keep pace with, you know, the current complex media landscape?
To be honest, I'm not sure it has.
Okay.
I think Wieden was a little slow to get into the digital sphere. I hate that word, but I haven't seen anybody in the industry do seismic shifts that I think, you know, are leading place. A lot of companies have tried to do products, Wieden included. They've tried to do content. They had W+K Entertainment. It's probably over.
CPB is doing products now.
Yeah, it was over 20, and CPB's had some success, I think, with a liquor, you know, and I think that's interesting, although I always remember Dick Powell saying to me, never make products. It's a tough business and you'll never, you know.
Tony, why are you such an advertising hater?
Because I think it's healthy to hate. I hate a lot of things. I hate bad architecture, I hate bad advertising. 99% of advertising is absolute utter shit and a waste of money. And I'm amazed that brands spend their money doing it. You know, everybody at Wieden+Kennedy almost has this slight distrust of advertising. I know that sounds strange. And I love it nothing more when somebody leaves Wieden+Kennedy to not do advertising.
Is that why you don't recruit, you know, people from?
I think it's hard to. It's very, very hard to recruit senior people who have been in advertising a long time, unless I like to hire people who I almost feel that they've got other interests. I think creative people who have other interests are a lot more interesting than people who are just obsessed with advertising.
Fair enough. On that note, lovely speaking with you, Tony, and hopefully we'll catch up when you're back in India.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, isn't that rare? How often do you see a madman admit that he's actually an advertising hater? Well, while you digest that, it's time to get commercial. But coming up on the other side, we get to the new trend in town that's being picked up by several brands after the stellar success it bestowed on Hindustan Unilever with Content Day. Stay tuned.